As comic book fans, we hate to admit it, but there are definitely some aspects of the books that just don't translate well to the big screen. And one of those things is definitely some of the over-the-top, overexposed, and just plain goofy costumes we've seen in the MCU. If you need something to wash the taste of edgy Endgame Clint Barton out of your mouth, just wait until you see him in some of his old comic book costumes. And as far as the female heroes go, well, some of their outfits make DC's Power Girl's chest panel look demure in comparison. Scarlet Witch is one of the most powerful characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so just imagine how much more powerful she would be if she wasn't crammed into a corset and could actually breathe. Actress Elizabeth Olsen believes it's way past time Scarlet Witch got a costume upgrade and pointed out that even Black Widow and Valkyrie have more practical outfits. But the one thing that keeps Olsen from complaining too much, looking at the Scarlet Witch's comic book costume. Compared to some other female superhero costumes, it's not that bad, but it's still pretty outdated. The skimpy leotard and tights is pretty par for the course, but hardly befitting of a massively powerful superhero like the Scarlet Witch. Is fashion Wanda Maximoff's greatest weakness? Well, besides her precarious grip on sanity, that is. And no, that's not a helmet she's wearing, it's something called a wimple. And if you've never heard of a wimple, that's probably because it was in vogue in medieval Europe back when it was considered immodest for married women to show off their hair. Was the modesty of the wimple meant to cancel out the rest of her skin-tight outfit? Whether she's in the comic books or in Guardians of the Galaxy, Gamora is always a tough-as-nails warrior we definitely wouldn't want to mess with. But in the comic books, she definitely has a different personality compared to her movie counterpart. Let's just say that she's not as averse to pelvic sorcery in the comic books as she is in the MCU. She even hooked up with Tony Stark at one point. Comic book Gamora may be a little less rigid than movie Gamora, but she's also had to wear some incredibly impractical outfits over the years. Yeah, sometimes there is such a thing as too deep a V-neck, we hate to say it. And she's also been seen in some outfits which just barely cover her. It looks like a single sneeze would take this outfit from a PG-13 into an R rating. So we're not sure how practical it is for combat. Gamora is a strong, independent woman who can wear whatever she wants, but for practical purposes alone, her MCU garb seems much more appropriate. Now that Sam Wilson is the new Captain America, we can't wait to see what his costume looks like. While Captain America is a classic hero we all love, we have to admit that some of his costumes have been a little bit ridiculous over the years. Like the Earth 398 version of Steve Rogers, who was affected by Morgan Le Fay's reality distortion ray. Yes, this is Yeoman America, and for some reason we don't think we're going to get to see him on the big screen. If you thought Steve shaving his beard in Endgame was an unfortunate style choice, just check out some of his other costumes. And let's not forget about the time Steve Rogers started calling himself the Nomad. While we appreciate the darker colors, we have to subtract points for that overly deep V-neck and impractical cape. Although we have to admit it is kind of funny to picture Chris Evans wearing this costume. Elektra has worn tons of different costumes over the years, some of which are more practical than others. Many of her outfits seem to be designed with the goal of showing off as much skin as possible. While we appreciate that this allows her a greater range of motion, it leaves her totally exposed in more ways than one. According to actress Jennifer Garner, who played Elektra in the 2003 Daredevil movie, those less than subtle costumes wouldn't translate well to the big screen, for practical reasons alone. Many of her stunts required her to be rigged up to a harness, so the costume had to be designed to cover it. Elektra's comic book costumes often leave nothing to the imagination, so there would be nowhere to conceal any sort of rigging. Just imagine how many more weapons Elektra could carry around if she had a few more hiding spots on her costume. Everyone knows that Carol Danvers started calling herself Miss Marvel as a tribute to her former mentor, Mar-Vell. When there was a male Captain Marvel, he wore a standard full coverage costume, which is actually pretty practical and something we could see translating to the big screen. And then we have the Ms. Marvel costume, which looks like a designer on Project Runway ran out of time before they had to send something down the runway. Poor gal doesn't even have a whole shirt, let alone a pair of pants. Eventually, she was able to get her midriff covered, but still no luck on the pants for quite some time. Seriously, even Bucky Barnes had a pair of leotards, but nothing for Carol? So it was hardly a surprise that Marvel Studios skipped over some early iterations of Carol Danvers' character and went straight to the full-covered costume we saw Brie Larson wearing in the movie. But some characters are just more challenging to outfit than others. Even under the best of circumstances, She-Hulk is a different character to clothe. Just look at how often her cousin Bruce Banner has to deal with shredding his outfits. That has to get expensive pretty quickly. Originally, She-Hulk just wore a shredded white dress, which looks kind of like a one-piece swimsuit. To give credit where credit is due, most of She-Hulk's costumes aren't that bad, all things considered. She's usually in something like a one-piece swimsuit or a crop top and tight shorts. Still, they're definitely more on the cartoonish side of things and wouldn't translate well to the MCU without some serious adjustments. Plus, if she's worried about her bulging muscles, shouldn't she wear some looser clothes instead of having everything precariously skin-tight? Ororo Munroe is not only a hero with incredible powers, she's also an extremely important one. She's considered the first female character of African descent to appear on the pages of a comic book. She has a major role in the X-Men franchise and even became Queen Consort of Wakanda after marrying T'Challa in the comic books. Because of her significance, she deserves a costume literally befitting a queen, and sometimes the comic books have fallen short in that regard. Her original X-Men team costume was just a precariously low-cut black bikini with a golden ring holding the two pieces together. Instead of providing more coverage, the cape and boots really just highlight the fact that there's very little Storm coverage here. Originally, some Marvel employees worried giving Storm white hair would make her come across as elderly. Were these skimpy costumes meant to highlight the fact that she's definitely not? Thor's original costume was also kinda goofy by modern standards, but he is from another realm. His more modern costumes are a big improvement, and you can see that they're not too different from how we see him in the MCU. But that's not to say his aesthetic can't go horribly wrong. Just look at how busted our boy looks in the Incredible Hulk Returns TV show. Let's just say both the Incredible Hulk and Thor have definitely glowed up since then. Their confrontation in Thor Ragnarok would have been much less awesome if they looked like this. After being conspicuously absent during Infinity War, Clint Barton returned for Endgame with a whole new, edgier look. But don't let the mohawk and tattoos fool you, because Clint has worn some truly ridiculous outfits in the comic books. Like when he was going by the name Goliath and decided to wear, well, we're not sure exactly how to describe this, but it's clearly not a shirt. Yes, cover your face, but not your torso. That makes perfect sense. Clint also went through a phase where he just wore a kind of low-cut toga and a pair of boots. Yeah, that headband looked great with his mullet. Considering Clint spent some of his formative years with a traveling circus, it's not surprising that sometimes his costume can be a bit too much. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Bucky Barnes and Steve Rogers have always been best friend goals. In Captain America: The First Avenger, Bucky is the superior soldier until their roles eventually reverse. But in the comic books, Bucky is a plucky young soldier who acted as Steve's sidekick rather than his equal, at least at first. And of course, what would a young sidekick be without a weird outfit involving underoos worn over leggings? The oversized gloves and prominent collar somehow make this strange outfit look even weirder. Thankfully, as Bucky evolved as a character, his outfits did as well, and he ended up looking much more dignified than he did in the early days. If you prefer Greek over Norse mythology, you might enjoy the comic book character Hercules. Yes, he's the son of the god Zeus. He really loves fighting, drinking, and consorting with women, but what he hates more than anything is wearing a shirt. Okay, maybe not more than anything, but he prefers to go topless whenever possible. Many comic book fans believe his vast wealth is because of his long life and investing in gold, but really it's just because the rest of us are throwing away our money on shirts like a bunch of idiots. Considering Thor is such an essential MCU character, it remains to be seen if Hercules will ever be introduced, or whether Disney will decide there are enough godlike beings in the MCU. But we think that if Hercules does join the MCU, he's going to have to at least put on a shirt. Sue Storm may be the Invisible Woman, but she has a pretty conservative costume, all things considered. Unlike many other female superheroes, her Fantastic Four costume was the same kind of full coverage outfit we're used to seeing on male ones. See, it's possible to be pretty and practical. Well, except for the fact that Sue designed some of her costumes to have high heels. And then we have the costume Sue infamously wore in the 1990s. Artist Paul Ryan apparently decided to throw out all of Sue's sensible outfits and put her in this ridiculously overexposed one. Even the 4 in her costume was cut out in order to show off more skin. It was explained away by the fact that Sue had absorbed her alternate persona, Malice, and really wasn't herself at the time. Sue Storm has some pretty neat powers, but being able to pull off matching outfits with her husband is definitely one of them. Magneto is a famously powerful comic book character who's known for his iconic helmet. Unlike Wanda Maximoff's headpiece, this one has a practical purpose and ensures Charles Xavier can't go poking around inside his brain meats. But when he deviates from his signature look, it doesn't always go well, like when he was going by the Creator and wearing this ill-fitting, brightly colored outfit. It's not quite the imposing silhouette we've come to expect from Max Eisenhardt. But at least it's better than when he joins the X-Men and shows contrition by shaking up his wardrobe. The giant M and the giant gloves make the whole thing look pretty silly, and the lack of sleeves definitely doesn't help much. This outfit was short-lived, and it's not hard to see why. Back when Greer Grant went by the Cat, she wore a pretty standard superhero outfit. Sure, the color was a little bright, but it definitely offered plenty of coverage, and her mask drove home the point that she's a feline-based character. But when most people think of Tigra, they inevitably picture a bikini-clad woman covered in stripes. Some of her bikinis leave a bit more to the imagination than others, but all of them wouldn't translate very well to a live-action version of the MCU. Since Hulu's Tigra and Dazzler series is going to be animated, Tigra won't be held to the same realism standards as the live-action MCU. But if Tigra ever makes the leap to the big screen, we'll definitely be expecting a major outfit upgrade. Moondragon is one of those awesome characters we would love to see brought into the MCU at some point in time. She even has a connection to a current MCU character, since Heather Douglas is the daughter of Arthur Douglas, a man who would later become Drax the Destroyer. But considering the fact that Drax's backstory was changed for Guardians of the Galaxy and that Moondragon has an over-the-top crazy backstory of her own, we definitely aren't holding our breath. Plus, let's not forget she would have to get a new costume design to fit in with the current roster of characters. Pairing a barely there costume with a flowing cape is definitely a look, but not one that would translate well to the big screen. Most of Moondragon's costumes are similar to those worn by Gamora in the comic books, and they're just as revealing and impractical. Namor the Submariner is a character comic book fans have been wanting to see in the MCU for quite some time. Was he hinted at on the S.H.I.E.L.D. target map in Iron Man 2, or when Okoye mentioned an underwater earthquake in Avengers Endgame? Well, one thing is for certain. When he joins the MCU, he's definitely going to need a new costume. That's because his original costume is pretty much just a Speedo. Well, in his defense, he does live in the ocean, but when he adventures out on dry land, the costume doesn't quite fit in. Nor does it offer anything in the way of protection. Of course, he does have a few different looks, but most of them are either rather, well, comical looking, revealing, or some combination of the two. Emma Frost is a powerful mutant who's not exactly known for her subtlety both in her personality and when it comes to her costumes. She worked as a dancer at the Hellfire Club for a period of time, which explains her aesthetic pretty well. Even as she rose to power within the club, she declined to dress more conservatively. Her brother Christian once told her that white was her color, but we don't think he had those kind of outfits in mind when he said that. Even Emma's most conservative costumes are over the top and definitely not suitable for the MCU. Sure, January Jones wore some of Emma's favorite outfits in X-Men First Class, but we don't think these would fly by Disney standards. Even Elizabeth Olsen complains her costume shows off too much, and Scarlet Witch's outfit is nothing compared to Emma Frost. We're going to go ahead and assume you've heard of the X-Men named Wolverine by now. He was in one or two movies that you might have seen. But his tough as adamantium nails, gritty persona is a really stark contrast to his early days as a superhero. Yes, even the mighty Logan wasn't able to escape the trend of superheroes wearing underpants over leggings. The bright colors, bold red belt, and blue gloves are pretty out of date. And the mask Wolverine first wore in The Incredible Hulk is just plain silly looking. And let's not forget about the time when Wolverine went full feral and went around without a nose. That's just not his best look, we hate to say it. The gorgeous Siren Venus definitely has a nose. In fact, she's stunningly gorgeous. She also has something in common with Namor the Submariner. Her frequent proximity to water definitely influences her fashion choices. She started out as a siren, living her best life by luring sailors to their doom with her sound. Then the Ancient One put a stop to all that by making Venus's soul as lovely as her appearance. This put a stop to her wicked ways. But she still dressed like Ariel when she covered herself in a barely there white shell. For someone who spent years living on a monastery, Venus doesn't leave much to the imagination. We know comic books aren't exactly vogue, but there are some standards when it comes to superhero costumes. some standards that Wonder Man completely ignored when he appeared in West Coast Avengers number 12. Saying fans hated Wonder Man's outfit is a huge understatement. Although his fellow heroes seemed to like it, the real-world audience did not feel the same way. Writer Steve Englehart knew he had to change the costume because of all the backlash, but had no way to do so in a way that made sense. So he had Wonder Man's agent show up and tell the hero that everyone hated his costume, and he had to change it, as if someone with these sunglasses should be giving out fashion advice to anybody. Do you think any of these outfits might actually look good on the big screen? Or do you just want to see someone try to pull them off in real life? Let us know what you think in the comment section below, and then click on that subscribe button for more videos from us here at CBR. Bye for now.